My name is Majora Carter, and I've been working in the field of urban revitalization strategies for a number of years at this point, and actually moving into real estate development to really think about how do we use that as a platform for social, environmental, and economic change in communities that so desperately need it. I actually have the pleasure of speaking a lot on college campuses, and it really is one of the most exciting things for me for a number of reasons. One of them, which is the students, quite frankly. I think they're always just so gung-ho about everything that matters, to them, and doing it in a way that is just so exciting. But oftentimes, when we're thinking about college campus sustainability, it definitely is the students who are driving that change. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Yes, you do have some great administrations out there, but really, we all know who's behind it for the most part. And but one of the things that since we're in this sort of crazy economic crisis, or as we've been told, how are we making sure that we continue to really push the idea and the reality of sustainability on our college campuses? And we've got this amazing panel that who's going to be talking a bit about what they've been working on to help make that happen. So with that, I'd like to welcome our panelists on board, and we're going to start first with John Onderdonk, who is the Director of Sustainability Programs at the California Institute of Technology. And next up, we have Carlton Brown, who is the COO of Full Spectrum of New York. And Melanie Kemp, the student at Warren Wilson College. And Megan Chappell-Brown, Director of Office of Sustainability at the George Washington University. Woohoo, raise the roof. Okay, so first we're just going to ask everybody to give just a very brief, minute or so, discussion about exactly who they are and why they're here.
Excellent. So my name is John. I'm the Director of Sustainability at Caltech, and essentially what that is I try and set the strategy for how our campus will improve from a sustainability standpoint, and then try and serve as a catalyst for that change and help others on campus implement those changes and find creative ways to do so, work around the roadblocks that exist in any organization. So I'm here because essentially I see this as an opportunity for me to learn about campus sustainability, learn from the panelists, learn from you all about what's going on. I think lifelong learning is a critical component, and that's an enriching thing that we all need to do. So thank you.
I'm Carlton Brown. Is this thing on? I'm Carlton Brown. I'm Chief Operating Officer of Full Spectrum. And what we are a company that is engaged in restorative human settlement. And we sort of focus on underserved communities here in America and in West and East Africa. And I'm here because I think there are huge challenges in the world. And at the end of the day, I think if those challenges are going to be solved, as the people in this room, they're going to solve them. So I like talking to young people, and hopefully we can inspire them to really go much further than our generation has gone, because our generation has gotten a whole lot of things wrong. And I'm just hoping that you guys will get them fixed. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Melanie Kemp, and I go to Warren Wilson College. It's a really small college in Western North Carolina, and it's a work college. And we have sort of this triad of work and service and academics. And I'm kind of here to represent you all, actually, and have a discussion with you all about how we as students are participating in sustainability initiatives and how we can do this cost effectively on our campus, obviously. So yeah.
I'm Megan Chappell-Brown, and I am the Director of Sustainability here at GW. Welcome, and thank you all for being here. We're really excited to have you all here. My reason for being here is because what I'm really interested in is how we think about what's possible, and we focus on what's possible as opposed to thinking about what's not possible or what we've done wrong. Of course, I want to learn from what we've done wrong, but I really want to think about what's possible and focus on that. The role of our office here at GW is similar to what John said. We play a role as sort of a change agent on campus, focusing on everything from research and curriculum and outreach, as well as operations and practice, what we do on our campuses.
So let's start with just down the row. John, so the money is, it's green, yes, sustainability, but it's also about the other kind of green, the money green. So how do you finance the sustainability initiatives at Caltech?
Yeah, no, it's a very good point. It's certainly about green, and I think one of the things that we pride ourselves on at Caltech is that clearly our core business is research and education, not green for the sake of being green, but all of our green initiatives also result in the other kind of green. And what we've looked at, and essentially it was looking for underutilized capital, and the tough economic times were actually an opportunity and a catalyst for that change. We found money that was previously invested in a money market fund that was earning a couple percentage points. At the time, people thought that was a responsible investment and a wise investment, but I was able to convince them that we could get a higher return, and it was arguably a safer return by investing in ourselves, investing in energy conservation, energy efficiency. And so we've done that. We've pulled money out of our endowment and put it into a revolving fund that funds these conservation projects, and that money then goes back to repay the endowment and keep the conservation projects going. And we're now starting to take some of that return and funnel it into other green projects, like waste management projects, water conservation projects, that may not have the specific financial returns that the energy projects do, but certainly create value for the university in supporting the brand, in sending the right message, walking the talk, all those important things that are critical to an organization.
Is that a trend you're seeing happening? Universities starting to go into their endowment, thinking more forward about that?
Well, I think certainly universities are looking for other places to find money and support these projects. And whether it's the endowment or if it's fundraising or other funds on campus, student fees, there's certainly lots of ways to find this capital. And I think that's just the key, is just look for the underutilized capital that's out there. It is there. But there's certainly a lot of schools that are tackling this, and I do see sort of this groundswell.
Oh, cool. That is a nice segue to Carlton, because Carlton, for those of you that don't know, is an amazing, amazing green housing developer and was doing green before most people were talking about doing it. He's actually a mentor of mine, so I'm incredibly excited to be actually moderating a panel that he's on. It's really hilarious for me. But anywho, it is. It's just like, wow. Anyway, Carlton, what do you say to folks that are really skeptical about green development?
I've been talking to people about that since probably 1987, 1988, and talking to the most skeptical people who have tended to be bankers. Unfortunately, I wasn't born wealthy, so I have to borrow money and get money from investors to do the projects that we do. And we do them in underserved communities. So a lot of the work we've done has been for low and moderate income households. And one of the first things we talk about is that we can build and design creatively so that we can create sustainable communities without increasing the first capital cost. And what it involves is telling them that we can deconstruct what we do. Building is probably the most traditional way of thinking, and it's very seldom efficient. And so what we've been able to demonstrate is that we can build better buildings, and many times for less money, that perform better. And when you're working in low and moderate income communities, what you're essentially doing is creating wealth for those communities because they don't put as much of their income into energy. You create better indoor air quality, and there are less lost days in work and less lost days at school, so you're improving, you're providing human benefit also in addition to rooftops. And so it was very difficult at first. It's still difficult, but once you've had a few successes and people can see that it makes a difference, it gets a little bit easier because one of the notions was that, to build a green building is going to cost 5 or 10% more. Well, we found it either costs the same or less, or the maximum 1 or 2% more. So the world is changing, and so you have to be consistent in talking to people and rethinking the way you do things.
Can you speak about one of your favorite successes?
For me, it is so hard looking back on successes because I'm so clearly pointed toward what I'm trying to do tomorrow. But probably the one that was a recent success was a project we completed in 2008 in Harlem. It was 250 condominiums. It was a LEED Gold building, and it was across the street from 18,000 units of public housing, and about 20% of the people that were living in public housing, well, 20% of the residents in this new building are from public housing. And they live and they own these own apartments, and we were able to structure financing so they could buy it. We also have investment bankers, lawyers, doctors. So what we did is we created a real mixed income community across the street from public housing where people said people wouldn't buy. We've created a new cultural institution there called My Image Studios, which is an independent film cinema, and we've created a new educational and athletic organization called Street Squash that actually teaches kids from public housing to play squash and does academic enrichment. And they graduate from high school at a 100% rate, and they enroll in colleges all over the planet, right? And so the point is, the thing that I like about that project is sort of demonstrates what we call equitable development and equitable sustainability, so it's accessible to everyone. There had been this sort of discussion that sustainability was successful only for wealthy people. Well, the truth of it, it's accessible for everyone, or it should be.
Cool. With that, I'm actually going to move over to Megan because I really am interested in a lot of the sustainability programs that you've incorporated that actually do connect with the local community. So could you speak a bit about that?
Sure. My background, my first job in sustainability was doing community development on the south side of Chicago and public housing, and so I've been lucky enough to be able to learn a lot of the lessons of change and project management and the triple bottom line of sustainability as opposed to just green, looking at financial or economic as well as social impacts as well as green impacts. And so I do bring that framework to what we do at GW. And in our community, we were talking about this a little bit earlier, what's the role different universities play, what's the strength of each university, and how does it differ? And at GW, it's an interesting place to be in Washington because we do have our local community. We're part of the District of Columbia, which is an economically and socially and culturally diverse population. As you might imagine, there's folks who live here from all over the world, given our embassies and the World Bank and things like that. We have a local population that has been here for generations, and they're sort of the transients like myself. So there's a real rich mix of people. But in our community, we've done everything from one of our most notable projects, of course, was led by our students, the Food Justice Alliance. And they initiated and we supported them in putting a garden on our campus. The food from that goes to some community organizations, including Miriam's Kitchen, which is for homeless. And we have one of the highest rates of homelessness in the country here in Washington, so that's been really impactful. But the other piece that we do, and we do a lot of work with the district, and we do service days with the Anacostia watershed to support the improvement of the watershed. But I think the role we play is sort of twofold, given our niche and given our strengths, which is that I hope that we act as a model or an inspiration for the community, so we show what is possible. This can be done. We're sort of a microcosm of a city or a microcosm of a larger area. And the other thing that we do, because of our strength on policy, I wouldn't say GW's big strength is in science. I'd say we have some great scientists here, but we have incredible faculty researchers who have significant impact on policy and how policy is made. So we have provided a venue for one of the projects we did with the district council was called the Policy Greenhouse. And we put a call out for ideas to citizens in the district. And we got ideas around giving a bike share for high schoolers in the district. There were ideas around using tax lien financing for green buildings. But these ideas, we cultivated them and selected the best ones, and then everybody had 5 minutes to pitch these ideas to policymakers. And so in the audience, we had the council members, the head of DC Water, the head of the Office of Planning for the district. So we played this role of direct service in the community, but also, given our strengths in policy, trying to influence policy.
I mean, I travel a bit in universities, and building that level of trust, between the community, universities, is often, it eludes a lot of folks. Let me just put it nicely. How did you do that? That was
Well, I've only been here 3 years,
Wow.
and folks will say that I'm still a newbie here at GW. I think this is the longest I've ever stayed in a job, so for me, I feel like I've been here a long time. But my point is that the foundation for that was not something I created. The staff here at the university who've been working and building relationships with the DC local government and the president of our university and the trustees, and there's a lot more behind it. I was able to leverage that and use that as a platform.
awesome. That's incredible. And definitely, last but not least, Melanie. You go to the school that, had I known when I was applying to college that I was going to fall in love with sustainability, I definitely would have gone to Warren Wilson, totally. But anyway, so tell me, you as a student, you're a student, period. But so how do you manage the whole student service thing?
Well, let's see. I guess, first of all, I should note that the majority of students that go to Warren Wilson actually are what you kind of are now, in terms of most of the people that come to Warren Wilson are people that are already interested in sustainability. And so I was one of those people. I'm sure many of you are as well. And so being interested in sustainability, it's unavoidable to recognize the social implications of the kind of things that are happening around the world and in our communities. And it's hard, I know, it's hard for all of us to not only go to our classes and go to work if you have work, but to participate in service. But it's so important. And I think that the service component at Warren Wilson, and I'm sure that you all have some service in your lives as well, can play a huge role in how we think about sustainability. For me, I'm really interested in food and where food comes from and food systems. I'm actually on the garden crew on campus and interested in things like the sustainable food policy that we have already drafted and proposed and passed. And I think policies like that are very important, but getting on the ground information of how people are doing this is also really important. Not just how to grow food, but doing things like service. And so one of the service projects that I did is we went to Detroit and looked at urban agriculture. And that was a really great way to get insight into how people in cities are dealing with getting food. If you don't know, Detroit is a food desert in a lot of ways, but there's all this foreclosed land, and I think this goes back to this cost-effective issue of how people are getting hold of food in a time like this, where there's this huge economic crisis. And that experience of service really taught me sort of how people are dealing with that and how people are growing food in vacant lots in Detroit and how they're, addressing the issues of social injustice. And Detroit used to be a city of over millions, and now it's less than 1 million in the city. So that's a complicated question because service is so important, but it's finding time for it in our lives, I think, really can make a huge difference in how we perceive sustainability and how to bring that back to our communities and incorporate it into our thinking and into our actions. And so now I'm back at school and try and work with the Asheville community on food policy and things like that. So, yeah.
So how has it changed you?
Yeah, it's changed me in, I think, my actions, definitely. I think that the school that I go to is so small, and it's in kind of an isolated location. And it's easy to kind of get stuck in that bubble of, what's going on campus. And I'd like to see my college experience as a model for how I live my life. And so I think that the way I did that was by doing service and getting out into other communities and witnessing the reality of the situation. And so the way that it's changed me is kind of figuring out how I take my interests like food and food policy and how I can go out into the world and help people shape the way they think about food and educate people and help them learn how to grow food just on a practical level, but also how to do that cost effectively. So, yeah.
No, thank you for that. Now I'd love to open it up to the panelists. Do you have any questions for each other?
I can start, I guess. we briefed on this a little bit, showing our cards. We did prepare a little bit together. But my question for my fellow panelists was around being a change agent and one of the places I used to work called Sustainability, we put out a report called Social Intrapreneurs, and it was how to be a change agent within an organization instead of entrepreneurs, intrapreneurs. In case you didn't get that, it's early. And I struggle with that. I think my staff struggles with that. Sophie can raise her hand. Do you struggle with that, Sophie? Yeah. But just wanted to hear from you how you see yourself as a change agent, what your theory of change is, and how you keep yourself focused on making a difference, making an impact.
Everybody all at once? Yeah. For me, it's part of my social history. I grew up in a family of change agents. I grew up in a family, my parents moved to Mississippi in 1957 when I was 6 years old to work in the civil rights movement, and I grew up there. And it was a really difficult time in some ways, but it was a good time in other ways, growing up in a community where people believed if something was broken, you could fix it. And for me, when I look around, I see a lot of things that are really broken, right? And I think you either have to be complacent and say, I will accept things that are broken, or you can say, I can be a change agent. There's just really no middle ground. And so for me, I've chosen to be a change agent and be committed to changing those things which I have capacity and my organization has capacity to change. So for me, it's as natural as getting up and breathing and brushing my teeth in the morning. It's just part of what you do, and it's a commitment to either be part of the solutions or be part of the problem.
I would echo that for sure. But for me, it's also a little bit about seeking alternate perspectives. Travel was a very formative part of my early life, and seeing different cultures. And I think that has given me the ability to sort of tackle problems and challenges from multiple angles. And I actually think that's one of the strengths that is required of change agents and sustainability professionals, is to see these very complex problems from multiple different angles and take those all into consideration when developing solutions. And certainly I think leaning on each other. We're all in the same game, and we're all charting a new course here. No one's figured this out yet, which is exciting. But if we can all lean on each other's shoulders and commiserate and share stories, then that's helpful as well.
I would say that the thing I try to focus on most when I think about a project that I have to do or a way that I want to change something in my university or in my life is I think that having healthy debates is really important, and not arguments, but debates. And I think that encouraging that kind of critical thinking and conversation with your friends is so important in how you formulate the way you think about the world. And I think that, doing that, and also, just the main thing that I try and do as a scientist is think about how I do my science. And I don't know if you guys went to the plenary session earlier today, but she talked about failing. And I think that when we're talking about campus sustainability and making things happen, we're all going to fail at some point, and especially in the world of science, the world that some of us are in, that I'm in. And I think that when I think about change, I think, wow, you have to fail to do that. You have to fail to make anything happen and to learn your mistakes and to learn what worked and what didn't work, and to have those kinds of conversations about how you can go forward from there. And so, yeah, it's kind of brief thoughts.
Can you indulge us, Majora?
I was going to say, Megan, your turn.
Oh. I can go if you want. Oh, okay. I would echo a lot of what you all are saying as well, and I think the important thing is to not only commiserate, but think through, okay, what's next? Well, if that didn't work, how are we going to do it next? Because it is so iterative, I think.
Yeah, I mean, everything that you said was all spot on, and I think just building on it, it really is about love and expecting beautiful things to happen for ourselves and for our communities, and to know that things don't have to be as they are right now.
I was wondering about the whole sort of campus thing. On some campuses, there are these two different worlds, or sometimes three different worlds. There's the faculty world, there's the student world, and there's the administration world, right? And they are sort of swirling around each other, and the type of engagement can be narrowly prescribed. But I think when you are working in the campus facilities sustainability office, it's an opportunity, I would think, to take down some of those barriers because you're doing real life learning on real campuses. And I wonder, at your respective universities, have you gotten to the point where you've broken down those barriers so students are really engaged so that your activities are really a learning laboratory for them?
And that's a great point. The silos within any organization, and they're particularly pronounced in higher education, I think, are a challenge. And unfortunately, I have to say, we haven't broken down all those barriers yet, but we're certainly trying to do that and tackle that. And I think one of the common denominators there is that the higher education space is all about having the debate, learning, challenging each other, growing, and exploring the new opportunities. And that's consistent throughout all the different silos, be they academic, administration, students. And so clinging on to those similarities and building off those and bridging the gap, which is sort of what I see myself doing, I think at least it's proven successful so far, and I think it will continue to do so as we move forward.
Sure. I think the main way that we do that is through sort of our triad of work, like I said, work and service and academics. It's kind of unavoidable. When you're working on campus as a student 15 hours a week, you have to work with a supervisor. And if you're doing a research project on your respective crews, say, then you have to work with one of your faculty members. And if you need something from anyone on my campus, it's so small that you have to go up to their office and ask them, person to person. And so I know that on larger campuses, that's a much more difficult issue of breaking down those barriers and getting to know someone on a personal level, not just because we want to know each other as people, but because we all need to get things done at a university. And I think, part of that is building community. And in order to build community, we all need to know each other. And that's interesting because I think that also ties into the sustainability issue. We're not just looking at how we can be sustainable in our actions and in our personal lives, but how we can be sustainable as groups. And I think one of the best ways to do that is to all get to know each other and go forward and do things as a group and look at more of what we have in common than our differences. And so I think that on a small campus, that's the best thing I can think of.
I would agree that we have not yet cracked the nut of full student engagement either. However, what I have found to be incredibly empowering and inspiring have been the student change agents, and part of having CGIU here has been wonderful as well because it's given our students a chance to submit their commitments, and we hope to help those projects along as much as possible in our office. That said, the university structurally is trying to do a few things. So in my other life, I would advise major corporations about how they should become more sustainable. So Ford Motor Company, you can't just make a green manufacturing plant. You actually need to make a more fuel-efficient car. And Nike, you can't just make your sustainability report out of recycled paper. You need to make shoes made of organic cotton and better manufacturing processes. Well, university, you can't just put solar panels on your rooftops. You really got to think about the education. And so one thing that we've recently done that we're all very excited about here is we've launched a minor for sustainability, and anyone can major in their major, English, engineering, whatever it may be, international studies, and then minor in sustainability. And our faculty it's something that has brought folks together across those lines. Our faculty, we had 23 faculty on the committee to develop the curriculum. I mean, there was this pent-up excitement and ideas of what they want to teach. So it's going to be team taught initially, then there's a capstone service class at the end, and then there's some tracks in the middle. But and we're hoping one of the courses will be how to do sustainability on campus and have students help us measure the financial implications of some of our on-campus projects. So we're trying to tie it all together, but we're getting there. We're not there yet.
Building those relationships and just ask to make sure that people see the connection. That's really brilliant. Thank you.
Can I say one more thing? Yeah, and I think I just kind of have a little story that goes along with this that I think really helped break down these barriers was I was in a class on community organizing, and I was in a group that looked at how to improve sourcing local foods on campus. And I think one of the hugest barriers that we found was education of students, because the initiatives have to come from all of us. And the reality is that the choices that we make on our campuses really affect not only the relationships that we build, but also how the campus works. And so in terms of food policy, that was going into the cafeteria and telling people, listen, if you're gonna pick the chicken patty sandwich every day, they're gonna serve it to you. And so we have to make those kinds of choices. And so I think education is a really positive way for students to get involved, educating your friends about, you know, what we do on campus, and that can be a really great way to sort of close the loop. Yeah.
Wonderful. So now let's hear from you. We've got folks with microphones. Raise your hand so people know who you are. And also, so we're going to take a few questions, and I'm going to ask folks to just give their question and hold off, and then we're going to go to somebody else with a question, and then we'll take it that way, okay? So just say your name, where you're from, and your question. Hi.
Good morning. Good morning.
We can hear you.
Okay, cool. Good morning. My name is Tony Anderson, and I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. I have like a two-part question. The first one is, 5 years ago I got involved in this work. So I got involved in this work 5 years ago or so because of the work that you're doing with Jora. And so I know of your work, but if you could please share with this space why you're this work, why you have people from Detroit, Michigan who comes into the environmental world, that would be truly appreciated.
Wait, I'm sorry. What was the question?
Can you tell us a little bit about your work and who you are, if you could? The second question is, we're students of sustainability, but before that, we're students of life, and by connection, the human experience. And so often we're going to have. All right, cool. All right, there we go. As I was saying, we're students of life, and by connection, the human experience. And we have our ups and we have our downs. And so how do you deal with the reality of dealing with the low parts of sustainability? Because we are not going to get it all right, and we're not going to convert everyone at the same time.
Okay, next question.
Does this work? Okay, there we go. Hi, no, I'll stand up. There we go. Hi, I'm Matthew Popkin. I'm from the University of Maryland, College Park, so kind of right around the corner. My question is, you know, the title of this is cost-effective sustainability, campus sustainability. A lot of universities are starting to come out with climate action plans for goals. The University of Maryland has a 2050 carbon neutrality goal. I think GW has a 2040 carbon neutrality goal, depending on different baselines and stuff. What do you do after the low-hanging fruit is taken care of? What do you do after the next 5 years when you have, when there is no cost-effective sustainability and we don't have a price on carbon? How do you move forward there? Thanks.
You'll do yours and then yours. No, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Poonam, and I'm here from GW. My question to the panel is, how do you close the gap between policy and action? So we might have policies, for example, to recycle, and therefore we have recycling bins throughout our university. But how do you get people to actually participate in the action of recycling? How do you close that gap?
Hi, my name is Pete Wang from University of Michigan. So thank you for talking about Detroit, first of all. It's a passionate issue of mine. But anyway, my question today is, you know, we talk a lot about cost, and sustainability is really important because cost is one of our major factors when we think about sustainability. But I'm wondering, you know, so much of it, like the current model that we have right now is thinking about profit and cost savings and cost effectiveness. But, you know, a lot of it, we know that a lot of it is more moving away from thinking about just profits and thinking about the environmental bottom line as well. So do we, as people who care about sustainability, have a responsibility to reach out and create awareness about the fact that it's not all about money? You know, we talk a lot about paradigm shift, and is that what we have to do? You know, we can talk about cost for so long, but what if it's not possible anymore? Just echoing on that question. So.
Good morning, my name is Victor Chumac. I'm from University of Bucharest, Romania, European Union. And We know that nowadays climate change poses a great threat in the increasing of the natural disasters like floods, earthquakes, and the students must work together to address these challenges by joining together in order to provide relief. What are the main driving force and the tools that students can use in order to address these issues? Thank you.
So we're going to just quickly go through these, I think. So we've got how do you deal with the reality, the low parts of sustainability. What do you do with when you've got a university climate action plan, and what do you do after the low-hanging fruit's already been picked? Closing the gap between policy and action, some real action ways to bring it together. And how do we convey that it isn't all about profit and do it in a way that's useful? And, oh, microphone, sorry. So anyway, hopefully you've heard the question before, so I apologize. I should ask for the moderator. I heard it.
So I don't know if we're supposed to go to order, but the carbon question jumped out at me because that's something in California we're confronting. And California is putting a price on carbon through a cap and trade program, which is giving us that price signal. But I completely agree with your comments that you do run out of the low-hanging fruit. And from my standpoint, that's where I'm approaching it from a deferred maintenance standpoint. I mean, it's not as sexy as climate change, but it resonates with the administration and with the VP of facilities and all these guys who are looking at operating our campuses for 50 to 100 years down the road. And so if we can prove to them that the work we're all doing in green buildings, energy efficiency, renewable energy generation, energy security is a long-term benefit for the campus, regardless of climate change or carbon, then I think we're making traction.
I really like your question about closing the gap between policy and reality and action. And I think that's really important, and I can speak to that on my campus. I think one of the most effective things we've done in terms of policy is not just providing numbers and figures in terms of education, because it's how do you get the masses involved in your problem area. One thing that we do is present literal kind of examples of the consequences of those actions, of not recycling, for example. And one thing that we do is we have this trash-ocalypse. And so our recycling crew on campus gets bags and bags of trash that is from on campus and sort of puts it out all over the place. And they say, listen, is this the kind of world that you want to live in? And so another thing that we do is we bring out a truck full of coal, and we say, this is your energy, this is where it's coming from. And I think examples like that are really helpful to get kind of students aware of the issue. Even if they are already aware, they can get kind of a visualization and an actualization of what that looks like. And I think that that is really a positive way to bring awareness to your issue and close that gap a little bit.
Yeah, sorry, and that also goes for how do you teach about climate change? The gentleman from Europe that asked that question. Our students put up a balloon that represented 1 metric ton of carbon dioxide in the center of campus, and it's a big thing. So it's a visual, drives home that message.
Climate change, that's a word, 2 words, that are not allowed to be part of the public discourse any longer. It's been redacted. And I think, the real challenge is that it's real. And if you look at certainly the United States, the vast majority of the population lives along coastal areas that would be affected by climate change in the next 50 years. And if you think about the investments that the university is making, the investments that we're making, personally, we're doing things that have 20, 30-year bond lives, to pay off. And so that building, those buildings are still going to be living in their useful life when these climate change activities start to happen more frequently than they happen now. This past fall, they had to evacuate Battery Park City, which is one of the high-rent places in New York City, because we were subject to climate change. Our waste treatment plant shut down. It had a huge cost. No one looks at who pays that cost when we make decisions on investment, design, and development, and policy. Somehow, we have to get those 2 words back into the policy discussion because they have huge financial implications, and not down the road, but now.
I'll sort of wrap a few questions together. One is around how do you deal with the lows of sustainability? Another is what do students do? What can students have going forward? What should students have going forward to make a change? And the other is the financial case. How to get beyond financial and create more of a paradigm shift? Those three kind of come together for me. And I would say the first thing that you're going to need is courage. You need to have the internal strength, if you will, to take a step outside of what is accepted, what is the construct that's out there, and have the courage to step into what you think is the truth. And that means bringing climate change back into the discussion. And that means also being able to say, this is a mess and we need to take care of it. Someone needs to take care of it and hold yourself accountable and hold your community accountable and your country accountable, et cetera. And in terms of the paradigm shift, I would encourage you to think about tweaks that can change the system. And they may not have a lot of impact at the moment you do it, but they may have impact down the road. So one of the things we've done here is the District of Columbia is writing their sustainability plan. They've put out their climate action plan, and the universities in the area, we've collaborated together, and we pulled together something called the College and University Sustainability Pledge. And we're the first sector in the district to say, we're committed to reducing our energy usage. We're committed to reducing our water usage. We're committed to providing sustainability education. And our hope is that other sectors will take that on and see a little bit of a competition. And we have already seen that. So all the embassies in the region they took our pledge language and made their own pledge around the sector, being the embassy and Department of State and all that having their impact on sustainability. So look for the system changes that can help you get there. And then I would say also, in addition to courage and stepping into your own truth, I would say think about what kind of skills you're gonna need. You oftentimes need to be a chameleon. Sometimes you need to be the activist. You absolutely have to be the activist. And sometimes you need to be the business person, and you gotta know how to run a net present value analysis. And you have to know how to talk the language. I'm not gonna make the case for buying large-scale renewable energy here by being uneducated in finance. I have to know how to speak that language to our vice president, who's the treasurer. So make yourself a chameleon so you can adapt to the situation.
So this is really great. So being a chameleon, being courageous, this work isn't for wusses at all. Because learning how to talk the talk is really important, and I think some of the questions that you all have asked as well kind of really brought that home. And it really is, and people really want to do the right thing with all of this, but it really does come down to making sure that you've got your facts, you've got your figures, and you've got courage to make it happen. So now we're going to throw it back to you all. There's going to be some time for there to be discussions amongst table discussions amongst your group that you're with right now, and think about what you've heard up here, and just mull over it for a little bit, and then we're going to come back in about 13 minutes. Okay, so talk amongst yourselves. Okay, thank you guys for coming back to order. So, panelists, did you hear, and what were some of the discussions we heard out?
I heard two discussions that were very similar, right? And they were talking about what can students do to increase awareness over a broader spectrum about this discourse. And one group was talking about trying to do it citywide in New York with the colleges and universities. And another was talking about how do you do it nationally, because it doesn't seem to be a national debate, or discussion about these sort of issues. And I think at both places, they said the schools is one place where you can start that discussion, and it's starting to go on even in high schools now. And maybe some of the things that we are doing that need to do are really generational changes that have to happen, more organically, starting with schools and moving with that sort of commitment for a long period of time to really make effective change.
One of the themes that I heard was about partnerships, and I think that's a very critical part of sustainability. We were talking in one group about partnerships between the university and local utilities and looking for alternate funding, rebates, benefits like that. But I think it extends sort of beyond that, because all of our campuses are not going anywhere. We're going to be in the same town we're at, so we're going to be working with local government and the utilities and all the community, for the long haul. So it makes sense to build those partnerships with the community, as well as partnerships with other higher education institutions. We're all going through the same thing. There's plenty of organizations out there. I'm sure you guys are aware, a lot of them. I want to make one selfless plug for the Green Billion Challenge. Greenbillion.org is a group looking to search for alternate ways to fund sustainability projects. So lots of resources for you all.
We were talking about this wonderful group of lovely ladies, talking about how if we don't have something like business sense, how we can learn how to enact our passions and get help with those kinds of ventures, and sort of looking at how we can maybe partner with someone in the community or another foundation that does have that kind of knowledge of something like business, to make sure what we're trying to do can get done. And also sort of looking at ways, this thing that I keep going back to is, we're all from different universities with a different student body and different financial resources, and looking at how we can, at something like a large state school, get the administration on board for our sustainability ventures, and get the student body to get participated as well. And so maybe starting that from the ground up and starting with the students and creating student groups that can go to the administration and say, listen, this is not only beneficial for us, it's beneficial for you, it's cost effective, and sort of demanding that from your institution. So.
The ideas I heard, Carlton and I were in the first discussion together, so I won't repeat those. And then some of the other ideas I heard was doing a real food calculator at Hopkins, which sounds really interesting, sort of understanding where our food comes from and how healthy it is for us and for the environment, and doing an inventory of that. So it seems like something you could roll up into a powerful force for change if lots of people inventory and disclose that information. I think disclosure is a key component of this work. And then two other folks at the table taking on some really formidable challenges. One woman is looking to address some of the illegal factories in central China and how they are polluting the local environment, and working with them. And then the other is looking to get recycling started in the Dominican Republic. So, it's a little bit of ambition back there.
Just a little, which is what we expected. So this is great. So just in closing, what I'd love to do is just ask the panelists to give their best advice to the folks in this room.
I feel like I've already done that, so I'll just reiterate.
Yeah.
Be courageous, be chameleon, and step into your truth.
And I guess I would say make connections. Make connections within your university, with your administration, and with your friends, and with people you don't know, and also reach out in the community. We were talking a little bit about community service and how we can do that effectively, and how we can get people, because when we are no longer able to address things like the financial implications of sustainability, we're going to have to think about how we can help each other with resources. And so I think making those community connections is a really great way to figure out how to go forward with all of this.
I think the sort of best advice for you, for me, for everyone are two things, a couple things. One, embrace failure, don't be afraid of it. Deconstruct it, learn from it. Embrace success, deconstruct it, learn from it. So frequently, we learn from neither our successes nor our failures. So learn from both.
Yeah, all great points. And I mentioned this earlier, but perspective I think is critical, and it goes to the chameleon type of approach. Sustainability challenges are extremely complex and multifaceted, so take the opportunity to jump out of environmental science class or ecology class or whatever you may be, and go take a poli-sci class or economics class, or learn from lots of different languages, learn from lots of different spheres that you have and resources you have. It'll make you stronger.
Won't kill you, but although it might feel like it at the time. But again, thank the panelists here for providing such remarkable advice and guidance and experience to the table. It's really an honor to be here with all of you, each and every one of you. Thank you very much. And also special thanks to George Washington University for hosting this amazing event, and us in particular. And also just thank you for being here and showing up and for being what I know are going to be the most courageous, people who are speaking truth to their own power and acknowledging it, and just doing what you know is going to be what's right for you and what's right for the world. So thank you very much for coming.